Welcome back to the Believe in Badger Football podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, in Verona, Wisconsin today. It's Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
It's the frozen hammer today, but man, you know what? With some of the things that are happening, we'll get into it. This could be the best tandem backfield that'll ever happen again, because there won't be any more fullbacks. And you know, Anthony Davis is one of the best to ever do it. And we're so happy to have you back on and talk Wisconsin and what we're seeing and get your thoughts, my friend. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, man, I appreciate y'all having me back on. I'm always tuning in and listening to the podcast, and I just love what y'all doing and love to get a chance to learn more about, especially some of the younger guys that I just didn't get a chance to know. So I think I was watching like Clay's episode a couple weeks ago. You know, I just had randomly decided to watch it. It was good, you know, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone loves big play. So,
big
all right,
play.
well, we got to, before we get into all of the news around the Badger program, want to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag. They continue to be your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over at betonline.ag. College football, NFL, NBA, college basketball, esports, golf. It's over there at betonline.ag. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up and use our 50%. You get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. AD, we are going to start today by talking. Well, let's talk about Coach Fick. We haven't had you on since the transition from Coach Christ to Coach Leonard and now to Coach Fickell. Stan, you know, from afar, you're living down in Atlanta these days. What have been sort of like your thoughts and from people that you've talked to? So what's your overall impression so far of how this all went down and the first month of the Luke Fickell era? Okay,
so I actually like the hire. I would have been happy with Jimmy as the coach. I would have been happy. I'm happy with Fick as the coach too. The way it went down, I'm like, if there was a different way to do it, you know, by default, you know, I mean, we just, you know, we're like a fraternity, you know, we are a brotherhood. So everybody's going to want the best. But I always remind like people, you know, Jimmy's a Badger, Mac is a Badger too. You know what I mean? So we all want what's best for the program. So I'm happy with Coach Fick. I think he's going to bring a different recruiting strategy, which to me, I think is going to help us in the long run, be more competitive at a national level. I liked, of course, I'm always a supporter of the program, but I felt like, you know, we were starting to hit a ceiling, you know, where we're you know, our cap was kind of the Big Ten championship or getting to the Big Ten championship or competing for a Big Ten championship, but not necessarily being able to take that next step and try to go for it all. So I like what I've seen from Coach Fick in terms of recruiting, in terms of some of the guys that he's looking to bring in. You know, so one of the big things that I really believe we needed to make a big jump was on the perimeter. You know, being long, strong, and fast on the perimeter and being able to compete and, you know, to stop the pass and throw the ball down the field. You know, I always said that if you took football and eliminated essentially some of the perimeter players and just played in a box, I feel like we would always be nationally competitive. We went in there. But when we get to the Big Ten championship games and that's where we start to have trouble is out there on that perimeter and stopping some of the long balls and really being able to throw the ball down the field too and make plays in the passing game. So
I love that you said we hit our ceiling, because I actually think that had a big sway in Mac's mind was, dude, we are going to consistently hit this level every year, in and out every year. And he's like, let's just literally rip the Band-Aid off and make a big, bold jump into the future. And honestly, listen, I wanted Jimmy. I think Coach Fickell, from what he's just done this month, and Matt, you know better than anybody, this dude I never see anything in the past like 5 years of us getting guys wearing the jersey before, you know, I committed here. I was never seeing that stuff on Twitter and on Instagram. And now you're seeing it every other day.
Well,
So we
and so
got a
I
quarterback.
want to hop in there on that because
Yeah, hop in.
one of the key things that he has done is he has brought in his recruiting department from Cincinnati. Wisconsin hasn't had a real recruiting department since Coach B was there. Really, since Coach B was there. And these guys are getting after it, and it's not just, you know, they're good at, you know, they're not just silver tongue guys, right? These are dudes who are out there, who can relate to the kids, who can, you know, who are talking to them every single day. Wisconsin had the lowest Power 5 recruiting budget in the entire country under Paul Chryst, and you see Fick is already blowing that out of the water. They're already doing these big things. They're supposed to get a commitment from a big time quarterback from the 2024 class tomorrow as we record this, Mabry Matoyer. It looks like he's going to commit on Christmas Eve to the Badgers. That'll be a huge addition for them as well. But you just see there's juice around the program now. There's juice, and like I don't remember a time since probably the Russell Wilson season that there's been this much energy around the Badger program, and people are talking who aren't Badgers. I have non-Badger friends texting me about Badger football. That never happens. And so this is a huge deal. I mean, AD, do you remember a time that, you know, there was this much excitement around the program recently?
I think no. I mean, it's so interesting you say that because a guy approached me in the gym a couple of weeks ago. He was a Cincinnati guy, and he's like, "Yo, you guys got a great hire. You're gonna love this coach. He's really for the players. He's gonna bring a different level to the program." You know, so people were really kind of singing him praise. I think I felt both. You know, I felt some people who are still a little wounded and frustrated, and I'm like, it's time to move on. You know, like it's time to support the program and try to move it in a good direction. I love that you talked about recruiting because I think there were some key kind of things that happened that really hurt the program, you know, and I think one of those was not placing the resources in recruiting, you know, and one of the biggest changes I noticed was we lost a guy by the name of Saeed Khalif, I think his name was.
He went to Michigan State.
He went to Michigan State. He was a great recruiter. He started getting into states that we typically hadn't been in. You know, he's in a while, I should say. He started going into Georgia and finding talent. He started going into North Carolina and finding talent. And Michigan State came in and just was like, hey, here's some money. You know, here's 75% more or whatever we are. You know, just came in and just stole them. And he's done wonders for that program. But he was an actual recruiter. Like that was his specialty, was recruiting players, you know, finding talent. And like you have to invest resources into these areas. The thought that, you know, coaches can just, you know, focus on the X's and O's and do recruiting and do all of that well. You may find a few people who can do that, but that's not the average. So I think putting resources into the recruiting department is huge. And, you know, for a while, I want to say we went without anyone in recruiting.
There was 10 months during this cycle, I believe, there was no one in place from, I believe it was June of 21 was when Khalif left, and there wasn't anyone in place until they put Mickey in there in March of 22. So 9 months without a recruiting department. That is honestly that's malfeasance.
Well, that's what happened. That's why Coach Chryst is not the coach of the Badgers anymore. I think that's a huge part of it, is that and the NIL part. To me, that's the main, some of the main reasons. Look at what they've done. They offered an 8th grader.
Yep.
Right? That quarterback in Georgia, or is it Alabama?
I think Alabama.
I mean, you got guys working hard for they have a vision, right? It's not just next year or the year after. It's an 8th grader. That's like 6 years from now. Maybe even when my math is off, that could be 8 years from now, whatever it is.
They're turning AD from reactionary to being proactive
and aggressive.
And it's huge.
There's a strategy, there's a philosophy in place, and there's a strategy in place. Yep. And so that's one thing I am excited about, right? Is like, I've never, ever questioned us in terms of X's and O's, right? We always have good X's and O's guys, people who can put together a game plan, but running a Power 5 football program and not having anyone in recruiting for 8 months or 9 months that's a systemic failure. You know what I mean? There's just no way you can maintain a competitive advantage if you don't have someone competing in every aspect of your program. Your social media people need to compete. You know, your marketing people need to compete. You know, your facilities people need to compete. You know, every aspect of your program should be competitive at this level. You know, and if you cannot compete in your conference or nationally, then you need to do better. You need to pull more resources and you need to go out and compete, you know, and I think that's what you'll start to see is more competitive across the board, not just inside the domain that is football, but all those other components that contribute to a successful team, you know, and recruiting is a huge one, you know, putting resources into recruiting.
Wade, you bring up a great point because sadly, they're going to change the McLean, the beautiful McLean that you and I had. They're going to put in. So what I think is huge is that the chancellor's on board. Mm-hmm. Rebecca Blank, the previous chancellor, was hugely into academics, which great. That's amazing. Wasn't the biggest fan of athletics.
That's being generous.
Just who she was.
That's being generous.
I'm being very generous. I actually really like Becky Blank.
She was excellent for sort of in a lot of ways the brand of the university, but in terms of the athletics, it was.
Listen, she did a lot of great things. Her and Barry butted heads on a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. You know, Barry was everything should go towards athletics. And she was like, wait, we got this beautiful university. We got to keep prestige. I think the new chancellor, Mnuchin, is on both. She's like, we're going to keep UW. We're going to elevate UW. And the way to do that is to elevate our athletic program. And Mac is no dummy. He's like, what's the main attraction at Wisconsin or at any other, you know, Power 5 school? Is their football program. Mm-hmm. Tell me it's not. Our volleyball team is up there. I love watching them, but they don't have 80,000, you know, fans. People don't tailgate all. I mean, maybe because it's cold, but that's our number one, and that's most across the country. And I think she's going to put a ton of money into the athletic program. Like we're saying, you can already see recruiting. First off, they hired Fickell at $8 million, which is a big time jump. They are hiring coaches they're paying their coaches more, which is great. And they are going to revolutionize the McLean Center, which AD, you and I had. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
But it could use a facelift.
Yeah. And I know when I was working and interning in the athletic department, that was almost a decade ago. You know, we were like last in the Big Ten in terms of facilities. And they went ahead and tried to get more competitive and revamp the facilities, I think in 2012 or 13 or something like that, maybe 14. And we were still sitting around the bottom tier of the conference because these other schools are blowing us out the water. I mean, you can look at Northwestern's new facility is out of this world. You know, like they're blowing us out the water. And so I think it goes back to us being competitive in every component, every aspect of athletics in order to, you know, compete at that level. You got to have the best of the best in everything. You got to have the best of the best in trainers, the best of the best in strength and conditioning staff, best of the best in you know, social media and digital marketing team. You know, you got to have all that stuff.
Yeah. And that was one of the other things I wanted to bring up was that for a long time, the social media side, the, you know, graphics and stuff like that was way behind what you see the elite programs. Right? I've always said that LSU is the benchmark when it comes to that. LSU is the benchmark. And if Wisconsin wants to advertise a program, not just to recruits, but to fans and things like that, you need to be able to do those things, to have those little viral clips, right? Yes, it was that very special Joe Burrow season, but when you see the video of Joe Burrow running out the tunnel in the Burrow EAUX jersey, and it's shot in beautiful 4K, and it looks incredible, that is as much a selling tool for the university as it is the football program, because you're showing the entire experience. And that's what they were missing for so long. And Luke Fickell gets it. Luke Fickell knows that you need these things in this day and age. And, you know, there'd been such a level of complacency, I think, because, Wisconsin, well, we're a development program. We're going to develop, and we're going to grab the local guys and coach them up. And that's great. And you need to have that. But if you're not going to recruit and you're not going to become a bigger national brand, you're never going to break through to where we all know that Wisconsin, at the end of it, can become an elite program because there is a wealth of money in the. I mean, it is a well-renowned academic institution. They bring in a ton of money through athletics. It is a beautiful campus, and there are so many things going for the school, that there was no reason that they can't, but there was a complacency there that, left a lot to be desired. So I want to sort of move forward, though, into this recruiting class that we just brought in. I say we, but whatever. It's we. I want to move into this recruiting class, though, because there's a lot of really interesting guys. And AD, I know you had a lot of takes on these players. I love seeing what you think of these guys. Who out of those guys really popped out to you of the guys that signed this week with the Badgers?
I like the corners. Jonas, I think it was one.
Jonas Duclona out of Naples, Florida.
I liked him. I liked the safety that we signed. Was that Braden Smith, I think?
Braden Moore.
Braden Moore.
Yep,
yeah,
I
liked him. There was a linebacker that we signed that looked
Christian
really
Allegro.
good in pass coverage. I'm like, wow, this is, because we're transitioning to a 3-3-5 defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's a lot quicker defense, because you got more speed on the field. I hated playing against a 3-3-5 in college. Just let me put that out there. I think
did UNLV play the 3-3-5?
West Virginia played it, and we played them twice. UNLV played it, and like for me as a runner, I like playing against big, slow guys. So let's keep those big downhill linebackers in the game. Sorry about that, my dog. Somebody might be at the door. So
It's okay. It's okay.
Let's keep those big, slow linebackers in the game, and that gives me an advantage. But when we played against a 3-3-5, the extra backer was really more of a hybrid safety player, and safeties were the most irritating by far. They hit the hardest. They were strong enough to take on blocks and make tackles, fast enough to hit you hard, get to full speed by the time they hit you. So safeties were always, in my opinion, the biggest threat to me as a player.
Which safety gave you the biggest problems in college?
My first year, I would say Mike Doss, right? And
he gave a lot of people problems, so you're not the only one there.
We were playing at Ohio State, and he figured out what I was reading, right? I figured out my read key on the play. Hit me so hard one time, my whole side of my body was numb. And I remember being picked up by one of the offensive linemen, picked me up, and he's like, "Yo, you all right, AD?" I was like, "Nah, bro, I can't feel nothing over here." I was like, "You better call a timeout or something, right? Because I can't feel anything. So you give me the ball, it's going to be a fumble." And he's like, and so we get to the sideline, and the offensive line coach was like, "Yo, he knows what you're reading to it. You got to make the wrong read." And I was like, "What? I got to make the wrong read? I've been conditioned to play the game with my eyes and read this key, and whichever way that key goes, I'm taking the ball the opposite direction. Now you're telling me I have to disregard, years of training and make the wrong read because this guy has figured out where I was reading." So, and I also was a redshirt freshman. I'd only had a year and a half or 2 years in the strength and conditioning program. So, I mean, he just was strong and fast. And so I needed to get stronger. The next year I felt a lot better and, shook off a couple of his tackles. But that first year, he gave me a licking. Him and Bob Sanders. Huh?
You were benching 405 off the ground. Easy.
Oh man. No, I wasn't a big bench guy, but I could squat.
But remember when we used to lay on the platform and do it?
Yeah.
Dude, JD loved watching you. He'd be amped. Yeah. Oh, AD. He just loved it. I was like, man, I love watching AD lift too, but it was JD was a little creepy on that one.
Man, those chain benches, man. I still don't understand where JD got all of his strength from, because this guy would get on the bench, like he'd watch you do the bench wrong, and then he'd get on the bench and demonstrate the right way to do it with whatever weight you had. And I'm like, how the hell did he just do this without warming up? Like on a chain incline. Big guy. No, he was not big at all.
It could be like 225 and he would just rep it out. And he's like, do it like that. You're like, do it like what? What are you, like 40 cups of coffee in you?
Chain incline. Yep. So, yeah.
Wait, so AD, so do you think, so you said the perimeter guys, who on offense, though, is a huge boost that you think we need more than anything?
On offense,
I'm gonna butt in here. I'm gonna jump here because I have very strong feelings about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tucker Ashcraft, the tight end out of the state of Washington, who they got very late in the process. He was originally committed to Colorado under Carl Durrell, And then Coach Prime didn't honor his scholarship. This
Mm.
dude is a baller. This dude is an absolute ball. Like, I watch him and I just see like Garrett Graham all over again. I see that kind of dude who's an old school Y, who's not afraid to block, but can really get out and run after it. And they're thin at tight end. Clay Cundiff keeps getting hurt. Rucci's okay, but I felt like the tight end play wasn't there this year, especially after Cundiff went down. I think this kid could be a big time impact player.
That's not our number one issue, though.
It's not the number one issue, but if you look at how, probably the number one issue this year to me was the offensive line. They only signed one offensive lineman, James Durant, who was on the podcast earlier this week. Make sure to go back and check out that interview. Quick plug. I sat down with James for about 15 minutes, literally right after he signed his letter. It was awesome. Like, he's a quintessential Badger lineman, already got the hair. Like, all he wants to do is go fishing and lift. Like, he's a Badger lineman through and through.
So, Diesel, real quick, Matt Perkins and I were talking that Snowden is someone that I'm kind of excited about. Matt Perkins says he looks very, very, very almost identical, similar to Brett Bell. What are your thoughts about that? Because Diesel, you played. I thought Brett was a lockdown guy. He just had that one play at Michigan that everyone's like, oh, he's not that good, which is wrong. He made a mistake, and I think it's actually coaching on that part. But he was a lockdown. Imagine you're talking about these perimeter guys, but I'm assuming you're really talking about the DB play. And we just got, it sounds like 4 new DBs.
6 new DBs in this class. There's 6 new DBs in this class. Four corners and 2 safeties.
That issue.
Yeah, I like all of them, to be honest with you. They're all long and they can run. There's an athletic kid we pulled from down here in Marietta that's really nice too. He can run and
Jace Arnold.
Jace Arnold. Yeah, they have ball skills, so it's like they all have I think that's going to help us in the long run because, you're not going to stop Ohio State unless you got guys out there,
Right. And I think to me, I know we're going to talk about offense here in just a second. I just want to mention one thing. You saw the Badger secondary get absolutely burned by Ohio State this year, like absolutely massacred by Ohio State's aerial attack. And I think for Mac, I'm projecting here. I'm thinking for Mac, like that might have been like the straw that said, okay, like this ain't happening. This ain't happening with this defense. And yeah, the Illinois loss gave him the cover to fire Coach Chris. But I think the writing was on the wall after that Ohio State decimation because even, that's Jimmy's defensive backfield and they were getting burned left and right. And what do we know about Fick? Fick can coach DBs. Like the defensive backs that he has brought through Cincinnati were some of the best in the country last year. I mean, you look at Sauce Gardner, you look at Kobe Bryant, Coby, not Kobe, and they were 2 of the best corners in the entire country last year. Amari Snowden, he's the highest ranked corner out of high school since Brett Bell. Everyone compares him to Sauce Gardner, 6'3", 84-inch wingspan. Like this dude, I mean, he's a dude. He is a dude, and they haven't had an athlete like that at corner. Since the one season of Nick Nelson, I would say, is probably the last time they had a corner who was at that level. And so, it's really been a minute. But let's spin this over to the offensive side of the ball. 80, this is going to be a completely different offense, like a completely different offense that we've ever seen before. Phil Longo, he comes from the air raid, but he's not afraid to run the ball. I mean, he ran the ball 60% of the time in 2020 at North Carolina when he had 2 incredible backs. What are you looking forward to seeing out of this new scheme that the Badgers are going to have? Because it's not going to be like what you were running.
Just more explosive plays. I want to see big plays. I want to see 20-yard gains, explosive plays, things that get the fans and the team hyped up. 20-yard run is great, 20-yard pass, 30-yard pass, 40-yard pass. I just want to see a more explosive, competitive offense, and it's so interesting that the offense is going to take this shift because I feel like everybody in the West kind of adjusted what they do to compete with us, to beat us, with the exception of maybe Iowa, who, aside from us, they've been doing the same thing for years, centuries, right? And so some of these other teams got bigger up front, went out and got good backs, started to, if you look at Minnesota, I was at their last Minnesota game and I'm like, this is, they're doing what we do to us typically, Illinois, same thing, so now we're going to come with a little more flair, which is, I'm like, that's what you see in the East. You see the flair, right? You see Penn State, you see Michigan, you see Ohio State, they all have flair. You know, they
even
throw the ball
Maryland.
down the field. Maryland, yeah, Maryland too. Even Michigan State to a certain degree. You know, they're going to throw the ball down the field, and take chances and take shots. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Well, it was really, speaking of throwing the ball, I thought it was really interesting that on signing day, they were able to sort of reflip Trek Kekahuna, the wide receiver from Hawaii, who had been committed to Wisconsin, decommitted after Chris left, and then had committed to Arizona like earlier in the week. No one saw that coming. This kid was like, a kind of recruited 3-star, as a junior in high school, transfers to Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, one of the powerhouses in the country, absolutely goes off as a senior, earns his 4th star, gets scholarships offers from Oregon, like everyone. Yeah. And at the end of the day, he decides to flip back to Wisconsin. Wisconsin now got this Hawaiian pipeline, which is kind of fun. They're going after a big time edge rusher from Hawaii in the 2024 class. AD, like when Wisconsin has been at its best, when you guys were there, they were going all over the country to get guys like you and Bernie, right? And I think for the last 10 years, like they've really sort of made a smaller circle, if you will. Like they weren't like you get the occasional Nick Herbig, you get the occasional guy out of Florida or whatever, but it seemed to be more and more concentric circles to where the recruiting department was going. They're going back out everywhere again. And it's exciting. It's a very, very exciting time. But AD, how do you think you would have felt going in this offense? Like, what would have been like for you instead of lining up behind Bernie in the eye and having 2 tight ends? Like, what would have been like for you? Because I think with your skill set, man, you could have been a big time. I mean, you're going to be a big time guy in any offense. Let's face it. But you would have had some big old holes because you would not have been running against 7 and 8 man boxes like you were all day.
Yeah, and I loved. We ran a little spread, like we had some packages in there that I liked. I really liked when we did that. And, having great receivers made a big difference too. So, Lee kept people out of the box at all. They wouldn't dare bring another safety into the box, when Lee was there. So I think that makes a big difference. And I think everyone benefits from it. So, but yeah, it will be different not seeing a fullback out there. I was talking to Bernie about that the other day. I'm like, what the heck, man? That's going to be interesting, But yeah, I don't know. I think I would have loved to do it, but I can't think about running the ball without my guy Burn. Like
running the ball,
doesn't even feel right.
Running the ball 60% of the time is like, to me, perfect. Mm-hmm. Even though as fullbacks and AD, we probably ran it like 80% of the time. Mm-hmm. Even with dudes like Lee, we still did it 80% of the time. I like 60. I also like, some of the run plays or pass plays kind of look like run plays where you throw it quickly to somebody else. I like getting the ball in people's hands, and I think it only opens up the run game. We got 2 guys. I mean, to me, Malusi fits this offense perfect right now. I think Braylon's a downhill runner, but I do think he will find his place in this offense, and if he can catch the ball, he's going to be stellar. I think losing Isaac Garendo, who kind of fits the mold a little bit more of like a pass catcher. AD, how hard is it to be a running back and a pass blocker?
Oh, I think it's definitely tough, depending on pass pro is one is actually knowing and learning pass pro, like when you need to step up and make the block and then actually executing the block. Those are two things that I think make it challenging, and a lot of young backs really struggle with that. So I think even some of the better backs that we've had, I've seen them struggle in pass pro, and I'm like, that missed that corner fire. I just think of Coach White talking about corner fires and high safeties and playing the percentages and all that stuff. So I think that in this offense, we're going to see a lot more of the backs being used in the passing game. And I think that's going to be great. I think that's going to really add another element to the offense. So,
and also AD, we had Brooks Bollinger. Then you were there for Sorgi. You were not there for Sorgi.
Yeah, I was there for Sorgi.
I mean, you were there for Sorgi. The difference in their games, Brooks could take off and run. Sorgi wasn't that guy. What's that going to be like now in your brain, having a dude like Evers who can take off and be kind of like that shifty QB?
Oh, I think that's a game changer, and I thought once the Russell Wilson season happened, I'm like, okay, That's going to change things, right? Now we're going to start looking at more mobile type quarterbacks that can get outside the pocket, move around a little bit. And we didn't necessarily do that, So I was a little surprised because I'm like, dude, I mean, you see how much of a difference that type of player can make, when someone who can make plays with their feet, they don't have to, but they can also extend plays. They can move around in the pocket, buy themselves more time. Receivers can get open, and they're crafty and can improvise with the football. So I think that's going to add a whole nother element to the offense that's going to take a lot of the pressure off of any one unit to perform. I think you're going to get an offense that can attack you in different ways.
AD, do you think we have all the pieces that we need to literally be top 4? Maybe not next year, but like within 2 years, 3 years?
I think within a couple of years, I think we still got to start solidifying. We have to solidify again those perimeter players and start bringing in, elite guys. I think we got to get back to playing good on our offensive line. If I'm just being 100% honest with you, offensive line play was not good this year. And I think that, me watching the games, I'm like, okay, everyone is heating Mertz up, but I'm like, are you watching, some of the offensive line play was tough, like every game, someone was picking a day not to perform well, and so we got to get better on the offensive line and up front. And I think that.
Do you think that's coaching, AD, or do you think that's the guy?
I think it's coaching, because what I saw this year was consistently bad play. And it was almost like, okay, this game is my game to get my lunch money taken all game. Next game, you go ahead and get your lunch money taken. That's how I felt it was. I'm like, what is going on out here? Every week there was like one guy who just wasn't playing good. And whoever that guy was blocking was making an impact in the game. So I'm just looking for a more dominant type of performance. And to me, that does speak to coaching, right? You got big athletic guys. That's not going to stop. We're going to continue to get big athletic guys. And so, but we got to get the production out of them. So the only place you can turn to is coaching. When you got size, you got athleticism, and you got ability. I mean, there's really not much else. What else? Where else can you turn to? So
no, I completely agree. I think the O-line, as everyone looks at it and goes, "Oh, these guys suck." That's, to me, they didn't play well. I think due to coaching, which is sad because I thought Bosat was a really good O-line coach, but he spent probably too much time away from that position to come back to it. And he might have thought, these guys might have been too confused by whatever he was talking about. Because when we showed up, Coach White made it pretty easy. Like, he said the same 10 things, landmark, pocket. Like, he preached the traditional football things you're supposed to do every day, the fundamentals of being a running back that he wanted you to do. And it really paid off dividends for you, me, anyone, Calhoun, Booker, Dwayne, like any dude who was there. You figured out landmark. Like, it took me a minute to be like, dude, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
But when you stepped to the guard's inside foot every time and ran on that path, you would hit the guy you're supposed to block, and it would be correct, and you could make a read off of that. And once you figure these things out, I think that's what we're missing. I think, Braylon started trying to bounce it outside because nothing's clean when you're not fundamentally sound. And I think the line was a huge problem. Graham Mertz could never set his feet. He did some bonehead things, but he could never set his feet. He could never step forward. Look at the Jets. It's like the Jets right now. I watched 2 games back to back, and they're both identically annoying to watch. It's just so frustrating. But I think Fickell flipped. What's his name? He's coming back. It's like you got Fickell coming in, and these guys were going to leave, and now they're like, whatever this guy's preaching, I'm coming back to it. And I think that is a testament to Coach Fickell and his vision and what he is going to bring. And he's delivering. Like, where he's delivering athletes and dudes that we need to be competitive next year. We might win the West next year off of just being athletic and have energy and getting coached better.
Yeah, and to me, that coaching piece, especially on offense, was so important, right? Because I'm looking at, the years we were successful. We had a head coach an offensive coordinator, a quarterback's coach. We had all these specific coaches, and we had consistency. And then as people started to take jobs and move on and elevate, we started this year with a head coach. I mean, last year, we had head coach and combined offensive coordinator in one, which I think I'm like, I don't know if that's the best move. And then, I think Bud Meyer may have been the quarterback's coach at one point. Then he went on to become an OC, and I don't think we ever got a standalone quarterback's coach.
They were using a grad assistant as the de facto quarterback's coach in Keller Christ, who
And I'm like, you can't do that. That's an important position that deserves its own attention. Like it deserves its own specialized attention. So I think that there are some things systemically that just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And so I'm happy to see that some of those things will get corrected. And, some of the guys I think they'll benefit from it too. They'll get a lot more chance to shine and do things and play and get the attention to detail that they need to be successful. So,
AD, how do we recruit New Jersey?
Oh, man. I mean, honestly, so many guys have come to Wisconsin from Jersey and done well. That's all you literally have to do is say, look at A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. This can be you. Like it works. It's a system. The Big Ten works really well for New Jersey. I mean, a lot of the games are very similar, and that it's a small state, so you're playing, your neighbors. Every school has, because they're so close. Every game is kind of like a rivalry game, so it kind of mimics the Big Ten a little bit. In that regard, and you used to playing in cold weather, you used to playing physical football. So I'm like, get in that state and get some help. Like I even told when I was back for the Minnesota game and got a chance to speak to some of the recruits and just let I think Mickey at the time, let Mickey know, look, man, if you need any help, I will help you. I'll get you in Jersey. I'll send talent. I actually like that. So funny story is like, years ago, when teams really first started using like kind of Twitter to really look at film, I was living in Charlotte, and there was a high school down the street, Dudley High School in Greensboro, really good sports school. They always produce some good athletes, and they had a sophomore quarterback, and I watched him play. He takes the ball, flicks his wrist, and the ball goes like 70 yards, and I'm like, damn. But at the time he was looking at basketball. He was trying to figure out if he wanted to play basketball. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to share his tape and say, hey, you guys may want to look at this guy and take a chance on him. His name was Hendon Hooker, and he ended up going to Virginia Tech, did decent, and then this year he transfers to Tennessee and just like kind of blows up. And I'm like, dude, we got to get people who are engaged in these type of digital spaces and catch those things ahead of time and start and get the jump on recruiting some of these kids.
Yeah, and that's the same thing about being proactive versus being reactionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm excited about the direction that it's going, and I think the guys will be too. So a big thing for me is always going to be the guys in the locker room, and so I was very empathetic this year to, what they must have went through with all these changes happening. And how tough that had to be on them. So I'm happy that they're going to get some consistency. They're going to get. Some people, they're going to get some people around for a while.
I want to ask you a question because you were the honorary captain for the Minnesota game, even though the Badgers lost. What was it like to be the honorary captain, to be on the field with your son? Like, what was that experience like for you? Because that, from afar, that looked really special.
It was special. It was really cool to be able to take him out to Madison, to show him the camp and the stadium and the city. Really, 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 really full circle moment for me. And then just being able to, bump into so many people who kind of poured into us. And I'm like, I got a chance to say thank you again, so that was really dope, like just being able to say, hey, I appreciate you kicking me in the butt and telling me, you need to get this assignment done or do some extra studying or whatever, so that was really cool. Really cool. The game didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
And the whole day there was kind of like this, not a cloud lurking over, but there was this kind of who's going to be the coach kind of, everybody. It was just there, right? Like this invisible person just standing there with everyone I talked to. So It was really interesting and talking to some of the recruits, and I got to meet some of the guys we signed too. So that was really cool. And talk to them about, you know, what it's like to play here and why I thought it was a good school. So.
Diesel.
Yeah,
Watch you go out there, man, as the captain. I was like, dude, somebody put some pads on this guy.
Yeah, I wanted to play, man. I was like, oh, this is bringing back some real memories.
Watch your film in the film room? Like, we're kind of far removed. Remember how we would be like, yo, Coach White, you're throwing some Ron Dame film. And he would do it because he loved it. When we were like bored, we couldn't watch it. We're like, I'll throw some Ron Dame clips on and Mikey B stuff. But do you think they watch like your stuff and they're like, damn?
I don't know if they do that, man. It's so funny you say that, man. I remember, I think one game we were playing like Penn State, like 0-1, right? And I want to say they had just played like Miami, right? And Coach White had been talking to me about tempo. He's like, yo, you gotta play with tempo. You gotta run with rhythm. You gotta slow the game down. And so we're watching Miami. We're watching Penn State's defense trying to get ready for them, but they were playing Miami, and Miami had Clinton Portis. And Clinton Portis was like shredding them. I mean, he was playing the game at a different speed than the rest of them. And that's what I was watching. I wasn't paying attention to the defense at all. I was watching Clinton Portis the whole time. So he's asking me questions, and he got mad, like, you're not locked in. You know, what are you watching? I'm like, Coach, that guy's finishing runs the way you tell me I need to finish runs. Like, it was fascinating. It changed the game for me. I'm like, anytime I think about watching film, I think about watching that game. And then that really was a full circle, a moment that changed the way I thought about stuff. And then he let me look at, you know, some of the old clips. He actually made a tape of Mike Bennett clips for me in my recruiting process and said, this is the guy that's going to be the starter. And I watched the tape and watched him run, and I'm like, I can do that. I know I can do that, you know, and that's what made me very confident in my decision to commit to Wisconsin. But yeah, I watched.
That's really cool that he did that.
Oh yeah, he showed me clips of Mike B, and this is going to be the starter next year. So.
Which is so funny because the speed I would say is the same, and you guys shiftiness, but dude, you were a little more like you could take a beating, dude. Like, you weren't a big guy, but you were a big guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought I was big. I thought I was like 6'2", 250, but I really
wasn't. Played like that. You played like Ron Dane.
I thought I was a big guy. And every once in a while I get reminded, you ain't that big, bro. So, yeah.
Oh man. So AD, what are you like most excited about maybe next year if you came back to see the Badgers? Like, what are you most excited about for the team in general?
I'm excited to see a lot more guys play. You know, a lot more guys get chances. You know, I think one of the things that kind of bothered me over the years were seeing guys, you know, you'd see guys come in and you're like, wow, this guy's good. And then you wouldn't see him again ever. And then they would just transfer and leave. And you're like, how come this guy didn't touch the ball more? You know, and there's several names that come to mind, but like, now I want to see those guys. I want to see us put our talent on the field. You know what I mean? I want to see us use more people, you know. And so that's what I'm excited about. And then the new look offense, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Braylon and Malusi being a 1-2 punch, and then him settling into that running back spot and being really them and Evers. And, you know, I've always thought we had good, decent receivers, but we'll really get a chance to see how good the receivers are now.
I'll tell you what I'm excited about is not watching Graham Mertz have to run back to the sideline to get the play after every single down.
Yeah,
that still might be it, but it won't be him. It won't be.
Well, no, trust me, they're not going to be, not with Longo. There'll be a lot more tempo that we see.
Yeah.
Wait, did he go to Florida?
Yep, he is now at Florida.
Yep.
I mean, isn't that amazing? Like,
when you know the particulars about the Florida situation right now, it's not so amazing because they have 0 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at the moment. Or maybe one. They need warm bodies, kind of like the Badgers need warm bodies, because going to the bowl game, they've got Wolf and Burkett, and that's it for scholarship quarterbacks. They've got Marshall Howe, who's a walk-on. Wolf's graduating, so it's going to be Burkett, true freshman LaCrue, Evers, and now potentially, you know, rumor has it they're trying to bring in like a 1-year stopgap. Kind of like a Brennan Armstrong, who I've been extolling the virtues of for a very long time on this year program. So I'm excited. we're all excited about what is happening in Madison. We've got to wrap it up here today. AD, want to thank you as always. And by the way, I was actually talking with our friend Clint Cosgrove about this last night. AD, you are the greatest Badger running back in the history of NCAA football video game. The most unstoppable player both of us have ever played with in that game is NCAA 2005 Anthony Davis is the single best running back in the history of that game, and I will take that to my grave.
I appreciate it, man.
It's the truth. It's the truth, man. I won Heisman's with you in the virtual world like all the time. So
listen, I'm not gonna lie, I won Heisman's with you too, dude.
So, all right. Well, we will be back. We'll be back next week with more stuff to talk about because the news just keeps on rolling here through Madison and through Believe in Badger football. I mean, you can't put your phone out. It's awesome. I love it. It's so exciting. Yeah. No matter if you're in Wisconsin, like Bernie is right now, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Tennessee or Chicago or Hawaii or Kazakhstan, it doesn't matter. It's an exciting time to be a Badger football fan. It's an exciting time to be on the podcast with you guys, and happy holidays to everyone out there. Bernie, I know you're having a wonderful Hanukkah. Want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a joyous Kwanzaa, a Happy New Year, whatever it is, however you celebrate right now, celebrate with your family, celebrate with your loved ones.
Celebrate by yourself, man.
Celebrate
Just do
by
whatever
yourself.
You want to do.
I mean,
just have fun.
Yeah. And
appreciate it.
AD, thank you so much. And until next time, guys, thanks for tuning into the Believe in Badger Football podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. And we will see you soon on Wisconsin.
Here we go. Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Man.